Hello again. Sorry, of course, I shared the second screen in WebEx Craft. Now, I hope it will be better. Okay, screen 2, share. Oops, this is still on the wrong screen. Move this.
We can see the slides now.
It has to stay there. Okay. Right, it's should we start now? Numbers.
Yeah, I think so.
You're muted.
It's quite steady now, the numbers, I think. So I think we can go ahead.
I don't hear you either. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Why don't I hear you then? That's strange. It's recording. My sound is fine. I was hearing you before. Okay. That's annoying.
Your sound output will probably be switched to the video.
WebEx is playing tricks on me today. Okay, oh, I know probably the sound is going on the second screen, my God. On the HDMI, very sorry.
You can hear us now then, Max?
Can someone speak now?
Hello, check, check.
Something is wrong. I'm really sorry about that. It's now I hear things, but okay.
Hello,
Yeah,
check, check.
yeah. I'm sorry. I was trying to use the second screen, but it's not working as expected. Sorry. So now I share here. I hope it will be good like this. I close. Then, yeah, it's annoying. I cannot see you at the same time, but fine. At least I hear you and you should see my slides. Fine. So let's start without further ado. Thanks a lot for being here. So yes, I think you are already muted. Just I couldn't hear anything, but now should be better. We are quite a lot, so let's try to be disciplined. There will be moments to share your questions, either via the chat or during the discussion. You can also raise your hand and take the mic. And the session is already being recorded. So we are all set up and we can start finally. Great. Yes, so I guess you know how to raise your hands. No problem about this. So I will do a short introduction now. Most of you have been already present either during the 2 workshops or at least during the first one, which was also on WebEx 2 months ago already, end of January. In the meantime, we had a full day hands-on workshop in February, and the resources attached to this event are also available on GitHub for those who missed the second workshop because it was a physical one. You can always catch up later. But so the goal of this workshop today is to summarize a bit the series of all 3 workshops, to have a look at the use cases we identified, and these use cases help us to see really what are the pros and cons of using Wikidata, Wikibase compared to other more traditional approaches to managing data. And for the future, well, we'll have also more events coming in the future. Join Up is the place to go to be informed about these future events. But so today, that's the agenda. We have the very big pleasure of welcoming Wikimedia Deutschland colleagues who will present us the roadmaps both for Wikidata and for Wikibase, which are two separate products today, although they have a shared past. And of course, Wikidata is still relying on the Wikibase software. It's the largest Wikibase instance. Then we also have Dennis Diefenbach from the QA company with us, who is going to present what we have in the pipeline for one specific Wikibase instance we have been using at the European Commission, which we call the EU Knowledge Graph. And the second part of this webinar will be really dedicated to the use cases we identified. We have a number of participants today who have been following since the beginning and really looking into concrete use cases. They want to share some feedback with the whole community about what is interesting for them in Wikibase and Wikidata solutions, what is still missing, what kind of support we want, maybe some feature requests, and so on. And we will have a general discussion altogether around this topic and see what would be the next steps together. So we will start in the maybe not the logical order with the future, because it will help us to really grasp what is coming, what is in the pipeline, and what we can expect of these two solutions, Wikidata and Wikibase, in the near or not so near future. And so I give the floor to Lydia Pincher from Wikimedia Deutschland, who will start by presenting the roadmap for Wikidata. Thanks a lot, Lydia, and over to you.
Thanks so much for having me and my colleague John. And it's great to see some well-known faces in the participants. Hi. For those who don't know me, I'm Lydia. I do product management as a portfolio lead for Wikidata at Wikimedia Deutschland. And with me, I have my colleague John, who is doing the product management for the Wikibase suite. Let me share the slides so you can actually see what we're talking about today. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Excellent, cool. All right, let's talk about where Wikidata and the Wikibase ecosystem are going. I'm going to start and then I'm going to hand over to John. So in the big picture, from our side, what are we working towards? Where do we want to go? And that is a very healthy, connected, linked open data web, where everyone can share their data, has access to data, and so on. And of course, as the makers of Wikidata and Wikibase, it's in our interest that quite a bit of that is, of course, powered by Wikibase and Wikidata, and very connected to the Wikimedia projects like Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons, Wikivoyage, and so on. Now, we're doing this with 3 products, and you might be aware of that, but just to make sure, we have now split it into 3 pieces. The first one, most well-known and oldest, being Wikidata as the community-maintained knowledge graph that anyone can contribute to, that holds data both for the Wikimedia projects, but also for anyone outside Wikimedia who needs general purpose data about the world to build cool apps, visualizations, and so on. And it also acts as a central hub in the linked open data web with all its connections to websites, catalogs, and what have you. Then next to that, we have Wikibase Cloud as our own hosted knowledge graph. People can come to us and get a ready-made Wikibase installation to try out, to play around with, model their own data, publish their own data. And then we have the Wikibase suite, which John is responsible for, as the self-hosted, you install it yourself software bundle that lets you run your own knowledge graph on your own infrastructure and so on. So let's start with Wikidata. There are 5 things we're currently more longer term focusing on. That is empowering editors to increase data quality, facilitating equity in decision making, increasing reuse for impact, strengthening underrepresented languages, and enabling the Wikimedia projects to share their workload. And I will get into what each of those means. So the probably most important thing for us right now is empowering the editors on Wikidata to make sure that the data we have is very high quality and that new data that comes in is very high quality, basically supporting them with every tool, process, or other support they need to make sure that we have high quality data that can actually be nicely reused to build applications, to power info boxes on Wikipedia, and more. And right now, in this area, we're working on the second version of what we call entity schemas. So those are definitions of how different classes in Wikidata should be modeled in a machine readable way, so that then, for example, people can build tools to automatically check data that is in Wikidata against those schema to make sure that our data is more cleanly modeled, more uniformly modeled, and thereby easier to build up on. The other thing in this area that we're doing right now is research around the ontology issues. So one of the complaints we hear rightfully around Wikidata and reusing the data from Wikidata is that there are quite a few issues in the ontology, which is natural if you let anyone edit anything. And we want to figure out what specifically people are struggling with who are building applications on top of Wikidata, so that we can then have a conversation with the editors around which tools or other support they need to more easily fix those issues or prevent them in the first place. Then the second thing is around facilitate equity in decision making. There are a ton of decisions being made on Wikidata every day, like how do you model something? Should this item be in Wikidata? Should it not be in Wikidata? Should we add this reference as a possible reference or not? Things like that. And we want to look at which ones of those are really fundamental and really drive either inclusion or exclusion of certain data and certain people. And figuring out how we can support the community in making those processes more equitable that are really fundamental and have a large impact on how Wikidata functions and how our data is made available. And right now in this area, we're very much in the research phase and trying to understand with the help of the editors where we are even, and then we will look at where we can go. The third area is increased reuse for impact. So in Wikidata, we don't just collect the data for collecting the data's sake, like little squirrels. We want people to actually use that data to build useful, meaningful applications, visualizations, what have you. That right now is not as easy as it should be. We want more of that, and we want more use of that data in contexts that are very aligned with Wikimedia's mission and values. So we want to make it easier, basically, to get to our data and work with it. And what we're doing right now in this area is, on the one hand, stabilizing the Wikidata query service, our Sparkle endpoint, since some of you might know, that's a bit bursting at the seams and struggling with all the attention and data that it gets. And on the other hand, we're building out a dedicated API for Wikibase that makes it easier to basically programmatically get data from Wikidata about specific items, for example. And the first version of that is out. I don't know if you've tried it, but if not, I highly recommend trying it out and giving us feedback, because now is a good time to get involved and influence how this is going in the next version. Then we have strengthening underrepresented languages. So one of the core strengths of Wikidata is that it is a multilingual project. All our data is available in many different languages, and that is important to us, right? So we want more of Wikidata to power applications that make it possible for people to access technology in their language and content in their language. And what we're doing in this area right now is a collaboration with Wikimedia Indonesia, the Wikimedia chapter in Indonesia, around the lexicographical data part of Wikidata. If you hadn't heard of that part before, it's basically modeling data about words like you would find it in a dictionary. Thank you, John, for posting links. And that part of Wikidata is still very much in development and needs more support, and that's what we're working on now with Wikimedia Indonesia. And that brings me to the last one of the 5, which is enabling Wikimedia projects to share their workload. Well, 10 years ago, or 11 almost, 11 years ago, when we started development for Wikidata, one of the big driving forces for this was to support Wikipedia better, right? To have one central data store where all the different language versions of Wikipedia and all the other Wikimedia projects can basically go and collaborate on data together instead of maintaining it individually. It makes no sense to, for example, duplicate the mayor of Berlin across 300 Wikipedia languages and then have to update every single one individually after an election and things like that. And this updating of info boxes and general sharing of workload between the Wikipedias is still really important, but has not gotten as much attention from us as it should have over the last years, simply because there was so much to do for Wikidata itself. So one thing we're doing right now is setting up a dedicated team that will drive this collaboration between Wikipedia and the other Wikimedia projects and Wikidata, and strengthening that connection, enabling them to use more of the data in Wikidata. Yeah, that was speedrun, and now John gets to talk about Wikibase.
Hi. Okay, so like Lydia said at the beginning, Wikibase is really 2 products from the Wikimedia Foundation perspective. And so I've collapsed them a little bit for this presentation because we have a lot of shared focus and overlap, but it is relevant to kind of keep that frame in mind. Yeah, let's jump into it. So at the 20,000 feet level, our big 3 goals for the Wikibase ecosystem is empower knowledge curators to share their data. We'll get into kind of what this means a little bit more in a second. Ecosystem enablement and connecting data across technological and institutional boundaries, which I've noted is a little bit more of a medium-term project. Like reading my mind. I love it. Thank you. So, right, empowering knowledge curators to share their data. So, if you kind of find these strategic things, you kind of need to like look under the hood a little bit to unpack what it means. And I find the byline here a little bit more clarifying. So, you know, for me, it's basically about the number and the diversity of Wikibases that are able to contribute to the ecosystem as a whole, to the linked open data web. And so as shared goals, we are working on a variety of strategies to reach out to underrepresented communities. And this is work that's really happening across different functions in our org. So there's work happening in the partnerships group, working with institutions around the globe, and thinking about it intersectionally, not just where you are, but what the kind of domain is that your knowledge base is around, and thinking about it interdisciplinarily. From that perspective, there's work happening in communications in terms of highlighting different projects and providing case studies out into the community. That's just getting kicked off. And we are working on kind of building up capacity and muscles internally on the team to ask better questions in this space and open our imaginations to how we can engage more effectively, bringing people in from around the world and from different backgrounds in a way that meets people in their needs. On the cloud side, data modeling research. So cloud concluded earlier this year a big research project understanding the needs of their user base as it exists currently. And one of the big, because cloud basically makes the installation part something you don't have to worry about. The next challenge that people experience is essentially how to model their data. So there's research going on around how does that look? Does it look different for different kinds of users? You know, how does expertise with data modeling change your workflows and things like that? Yeah, and moving from closed to open beta is a big project for this year, and will be very exciting in terms of, you know, making it accessible to more people. On Suite side, we're kind of like a quarter behind cloud in a lot of our endeavors. So we're in the middle of, we just concluded the kind of a comparable research survey of existing community members, which I think a number of you participated in. Thank you so much for taking the time for that. And that will help us kind of get a shape of people's needs and understand how we all map against each other and where there's kind of shared needs and where there's pockets of needs that are mapped more closely to individual communities and things like that, what kind of big challenges people are having. So that work is being analyzed, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to share that out at the end of next month publicly. Okay, next one, see if we play. On the ecosystem enablement side, so this really gets into the the tooling that we can kind of help facilitate that makes it easier for a larger ecosystem to flourish. So what can we kind of contribute here, and what kind of work can we do as an org to you know, seed a healthy ecosystem, which one of the cool things about joining this project has been what a healthy ecosystem there is already in existence. You know, this whole series is a great example of that, and not the only one. So in terms of specific projects we're working on, under the shared banner, we kicked off a project called Newbie Docs, and basically it's just recognizing that it's complicated to get started in this space, and so we're tackling subjects around, you know, how do you just do a basic install of Suite? How do you start approaching ideas around data modeling beyond even the specifics of how to do it? What kind of tools are available? Things like that. Our hope is to get these out over the next couple of months, and we're really going to be excited about feedback and contributions as well. So we're taking a little bit of a lean approach here to get them out to you ASAP, and with a humble approach to we assume that there'll be some gaps that you can help highlight for us and tell us where needs are on that front. On the cloud side, so smooth and scalable search solution. So the scaling Elasticsearch is a complex topic in general, as I understand it, but kind of breaking some amount of new ground as cloud, because they have some unique infrastructure and because they're kind of one-to-many model, which isn't the typical setup of Wikibase historically. So how do you scale search in that kind of a context has been something that they've been working really hard on and have made a lot of progress on, and that's a big focus for the team right now. On Suite side, we are building capacity to be able to do stuff. So on the one hand, this research is gonna help frame where we're going that we spoke about before, but the other side of it is that we need people inside the WMD whose focus area is Suite. And so we're building up engineering and research capacity within the team right now. We have two engineers that are going to be starting to onboard in May and June, and a couple of other people planned for the rest of the year, and a researcher planned as well. So we're kind of in early days building up the team there. There's partnerships folks, there's myself, and there's Monica, who is the engineering manager. So I like to note this with specificity, because I think sometimes looking at WMT from the outside, it seems that we are quite vast, but in some ways we are. But in other ways, the people on these particular projects we're still pretty small and scrappy. So, and we're just getting up and running on Suite particularly. Another big focus area of ours has been getting up to parity with MediaWiki. As you probably know, Wikibase is actually an extension built on top of MediaWiki, and since the Docker image concept came together on our side, we have had struggles having the resources to stay caught up with the MediaWiki release cycle. We actually just got caught up with the last major release, 1.39, although in full transparency, it's going to be tough to stay caught up over the next release because we're transitioning on the developer side of things, but we will continue to prioritize it, and our pace is outpacing them at this point. So it's only a matter of time till we're consistently in sync. Yeah, another kind of soft note here is that I think another big part of ecosystem enablement is about how we show up in kind of the open sourciness of the project. And this is something that I think there's a lot of enthusiasm about in the org. I personally am on a learning curve here, so trying to figure out how we can show up best in these ways, and very open to kind of feedback and engagement on that side, and what'll continue to be kind of more clarified and prioritized moving forward. Okay, next one, please. So this one, like I said, is more of a medium-term goal, connecting data across technological and institutional boundaries. There's currently an experimental federated properties feature that comes turned off in Suite, but you can turn on if you like. I would love for people to kick the tires there and tell us if that's useful. I do know that there's a huge kind of spectrum of federation kind of types and opportunities available, and that there has been some pushback on maybe this wasn't the kind that you were hoping for first. but it was an approachable first experiment in a space with a lot of complexity. And so it would be really interesting to hear about your experiences there, so we can figure out how to move forward and get to that kind of big map vision that Lydia shared at the beginning. Cool. I think that's the whole Wikibase space. Yeah.
How do we
Right.
take questions now? Or?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot to both of you for the great presentations. I guess, yes, we can open the floor to the audience. Some technical questions in the chat, but I think they've been answered already. So if you have questions, yeah, either write them down, or you can raise your hand. Yes, applause indeed. I have a few questions, but don't want to monopolize the floor. So if someone else wants to start, just go ahead.
Max, I see also some hands raised, by the way, from Mihai, from Dennis, but I don't know if it's right now or
here,
before.
so please give the floor then yourself, because I don't see them here. Right.
Mihai, I don't know if it's still relevant, but if it is, please go ahead.
Absolutely. I just raised it. So I like this idea of integration of different wiki bases that you've mentioned before. And one of the slide, the last slide, was also mentioning the idea with of integration with other systems. And I'm coming from OP, the Publication Office of the European Union. We actually had some exchanges in the past as well, but we didn't get into details about the integration with the system that we already have. We have our own triple store. The name is Seller. It's based on Virtuoso, and the idea of collaborating somehow, connecting somehow beyond the alignment area that we are already doing. It's something it's of interest for us. So how do you see that area? Do you have something in mind about integration with other triple stores than just Wikibases? Thank you.
Lydia, feel free to jump in if you like. Yeah, so I mean, to be perfectly blunt, that's kind of one step beyond something I've considered in depth. My understanding is, and I'm still on my learning curve of 6 months in here, and hopefully people know.
You anyway know more than we do from our
yeah. Well, in some ways, in other ways not. But yeah, so my understanding is it's a hard thing to do well, because it's one thing to kind of send information once, kind of an import-output model, export model, right? But if you really want to keep to knowledge graphs in sync, that's a whole other kettle of fish, especially if they're not the exact same, and frequently what's really interesting is about keeping ones that are in sync that aren't the exact same. For example, your use case, right? Maybe you have different ontologies. Maybe you have, gosh, I don't know, different technologies, different APIs that one can imagine, like a lot of different kind of technical issues in syncing to knowledge graphs. So my gut here is that we would probably start with the marginally easier step of trying to get Wikibases to talk to each other that have kind of diverse sets of knowledge, and then build out from there. But I could see trying to do it in ways that are more kind of open and agnostic, using like shared APIs or something like that could be then ported to use in other for other technologies. But one thing I'm really kind of invested in general is kind of expanding my understanding and sensitivity and kind of imagination in these spaces. So I'm basically always happy to hop on a phone call and kind of hear about a particular use case. So if you want to reach out. My email is at the end of our presentation slide deck, and I would love to have a chat with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe to add what John said, I would agree. And I think part of the difficulty comes from different people meaning different things when we talk about integration between two systems. And maybe it would help to have a more concrete example and understanding of what you in particular want. Maybe you can just write that down on a page for John.
Yeah, actually, we already discussed with with your colleagues
okay,
after
cool.
the discussion for some years ago, actually, about, for example, really about performing alignments. It was a difficult task to do because accessing in a heavier mode the Wikidata SPARQL endpoint was not really something nice to do, let's say. And that stopped our project because it was not really feasible to go into that direction. So that's why the particular case was, how do we make such mechanism possible? So it's not really like synchronizing our data sets or whatever, because it's definitely not the case. But to perform some specific operation, like, okay, we need to align two graphs or whatever, two lists of values between our triple stops. How do we perform that thing? It's not something that we should go to the public SPARQL endpoints, probably, because everybody's going there. Are there any other gates, let's say entry points? That's one very specific use case.
Yeah, maybe specifically about the Wikidata SPARQL endpoint, the Wikidata query service. So there are people and organizations who have set up their own copy, so to say, of the system to run whatever they want against without interfering with the public endpoint. This is not necessarily super easy.
We know this is how
Okay.
we actually got in contact with let's say with Max, and they needed Diffenbach to actually work on that parallel. But I was thinking that, okay, that's still for us at OP. It's still somehow for we need to deal with a workaround somehow. But anyway,
yeah,
I was just wanting to find out if there are any other options. So anyway, thank you. That should be all for me.
Dennis, or was there another hand raised before? Dennis, you raise your hand, or?
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to ask if you can detail a bit more about the schema. So the first point that you tackled in the presentation about how to reuse schema. So one of the use case that I heard more often, or that people somehow would like, is that you have an entry in a Wikibase, and then you say this is instance of building, and then basically there is something like a form that you can fill, where there are basically properties that are proposed to fill, because basically if you start with instance of building and then you look at it and it's empty and you do not know what to do, and then maybe you use properties that were not thought for this instance. So this is something that I heard many people speaking about, that they would like to see. And the question is, if you are imagining, if it is this what you imagine behind this schema extension version 2, or I don't know how you got it.
Right. Not version 2. Version 2 is basically the groundwork to being able to do something like that. So what we're doing in version 2 is basically being able to say, okay, on the item for human, the class, this is the corresponding entity schema that describes what a human should look like. That's the very basics of this. And this is one step we need towards getting to something like that. I'm sure you've heard of Gradle from Magnus. Okay, Gradle is a tool by Magnus Manske that among other things, takes entity schemas to build you a form. So you can say, give me an input form for this particular entity schema, and it will give you a nice form. This right now is a separate tool. Long term, I think we need something like that integrated more in Wikibase than that, but that is available today already, if you fancy. And I can try to find a link.
Okay. Did I miss a raised hand somewhere? Or so in the chat we have some comments also about practical examples of interoperability between systems. Indeed, APIs is clearly one way, and it's good to see the REST API of Wikidata. This will be integrated in Wikibase as well. I mean, the REST API will be able, I guess, to use on other Wikibase instances. So, yeah.
So we're not quite there yet, because we wanted to give it some time to find itself.
Yes, of course.
On Wikidata. But yes, we want similar APIs across the whole Wikibase ecosystem.
Okay, yeah, Mihai, you wanted to say something?
Yeah,
go ahead.
One more. So I said I'm coming from an institution. For institution, the one of the elements that it's important is the credibility of the data. We need to be sure that that data is there, it's valid, and it will not be whatever. If it's dynamic, if it's changed, at least we know what is the status of the new data. For that reason, we have our own let's say reference data assets. For example, for a list of corporate bodies, we have that means institutions of the European Union. We have a dedicated list for that, and everybody knows that if you want to get the current name of that particular institution, you have an ID, and you know what is the name. That's definitive. Nobody will put that under question, that name. It follows a specific rule or approval and so on. So from that perspective, you can imagine that connecting with something in Wikidata, it's somehow tricky for us, because we've did some alignments, but we are always somehow questioning, okay, should we do it? What kind of trust can we put in that type of alignment? Because if somebody else from outside it's coming and changing that, maybe yesterday it was perfectly exact match between the two, but today is not anymore. So do you see any mechanism that can be put in place to ensure some kind of not necessarily credibility, because that's definitely not something that you can control, but at least to allow something like a player like this, like an institution, to know, okay, there was a change, okay, that implies that we need to validate ourselves if that thing is still valid.
Yeah, several thoughts. One thing you can try right now is a tool, again, by Magnus Manske. We love him. Called SparkleRise. Magnus Manske.
Okay.
He's a tool developer. Great guy. Which is called SparkleRC, Sparkle Recent Changes. And basically, you can write a Sparkle query for all the items that interest you. And then it will generate you a list of changes that have been made to those. So that would give you some way to check, okay, what happened on the items I'm interested in recently. The other thing we have right now is a tool called the Mismatch Finder, which is a tool to review mismatching data between Wikidata and some other data source. So imagine, for example, someone writing a script to compare the data from the German National Library to the data in Wikidata. And if they find out, oh, Wikidata says Goethe was born on this day, and the German National Library says, no, Goethe was born on this day, a human should probably have a look what's going on, because that's not good, that's different. Thank you again for the links, John. So that's one way to basically have humans review mismatches between Wikidata and some other credible source. And the third thing we've been playing around with is some concept called science statements, which is the idea that there are certain statements where we have some institution or otherwise trusted source for that data, and we could have them enter that data in Wikidata and basically cryptographically sign that, yes, this is what we say, and no one messed with it. Then others could still edit that data, but the signature would break and it would be visible. But that's a bit farther out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. I still have a couple of questions, but maybe it will be better if we move forward first and keep provided. I hope Lydia and John, you can stay with us a bit longer. Great, because the second part will be also more about the concrete use cases, the feedback we had from the community, and I am sure many questions will still arise from this. But so I suggest maybe Dennis, if you're ready, you can also share with us what we have in the pipeline for the EU knowledge graph. So for those who are not familiar, yeah, Dennis, you will maybe summarize it. But so it's one specific Wikibase instance we have been working on for 2-3 years now inside the European Commission. And so just as a very basic introduction, it used to be mainly supporting the Coesio project, but now this is also changing, and this EU knowledge graph has its own existence. It means that it will have also more visibility, and we can discuss after how there is the possibility for some onboarding of prototypes or projects inside the EU knowledge graph. But first, Dennis, for a sneak peek of what is coming on that site. Thanks. Dennis, you are muted. Sorry.
So I was going to say that I would like to briefly say what is the current status of the EU knowledge graph, and also what is basically where basically we would like to go, or what are things that we would like to add. So, I don't see my mouse, which is not so good. So in one sentence, the EU knowledge graph is a data repository to store structured data about the European Union, and it is available under knowledgegraph.eu. And it looks exactly like this. So it's a Wikibase instance where we basically aggregated different type of information. So the current content, as Max was saying, basically we aggregated or structured information now since more than 2 years. And the EU knowledge graph is relatively big. It nearly contains 1 billion triples, which is not a huge knowledge graph, but it's also not a small knowledge graph. So Wikidata contains 17 billion, so it's 17 times bigger. Yeah, but still it's not a small knowledge graph. So what does it contain today? Just to give you an idea of concepts that you basically can use or that you can model data with. So we have information about a European institution. Here, for example, we have the article about the European Parliament. We have information about the European countries. Here there is this article about Estonia with all the relative corresponding information. There are information about the capital cities like Tallinn, like head of states like Emmanuel Macron. We have information about the Directorate Generals, which are the ministries of the European Commission. We have some information about buildings and canteens. This here is the canteen at Berlaymont. So Berlaymont, for the people that maybe don't know, is this famous building that you sometimes see in the news. Then we have information like the regions of Europe, which basically come from Eurostat. This is, for example, province of Asti, and we know it's 2016 NUTS3 statistical territorial entity, and it's also 2021 NUTS3 statistical territorial entity. So it's basically some vocabulary that is used inside the Commission. One larger part of the graph is made by projects that are financed by the European Union. So this here is a project in Czech Republic. We know that it's contained in a certain region. So here we model it using this Eurostat region. It is financed by the European Union. It is in Czechia. It has a certain budget. But we have also a lot of vocabulary that is used to describe funds and programs that are used in the European Union. For example, this program or this European Regional Development Fund. And then there are also connections between these instances and other regions or countries, etc. And all this data is was created for Cohesio and is basically accessible and can be reused also for other scopes. As you see here, we have also beneficiary of projects like the Institute of Scientific Instrument of the Czech Academy of Science. This here is the corresponding article. So we have 500,000 beneficiaries of EU funds. And then there are some more recent development. Now there is a collection of linked data solution that is cataloged in this Wikibase instance. So basically these are all solutions that basically use linked data and that are collected in this Sparkle and in this Wikibase instance for basically cataloging purposes. And something very, very recent is there is a project that wants basically to catalog all public Sparkle endpoints that exist. And here we have, for example, this Sparkle endpoint, which is somewhere sitting in France. There is the address and also the number of triples. So this is more or less the data that is currently in. On top of this, we provide different services. So we provide data exports. This are data exports over time in RDF format of the whole data. We provide a query service, which is the one that is given automatically by the Wikidata Wikibase ecosystem, which allows, for example, also some nice visualization. And we have an integration with OpenRefine. So there are instructions so that you can connect basically OpenRefine to this instance and ingest the data. Now comes what we would like to do in the future. So what is going to happen, I would say, in the next year. So first of all, we are working on faster data imports. This is done also in collaboration with the help with Wikimedia Deutschland. We have deployed the first version in dev, and we see that we can ingest new entities with a much higher pace than before. We will deploy in this instance a new feature that allows to reuse properties and items from Wikidata. This is something that we used also a bit in the second workshop, and I can show it to you on another instance. So this would be a Wikibase, and we search for University of, let's say it's a new beneficiary, and let's say the University of Cambridge. It is not present in this Wikibase, but we can clone it from Wikidata. And basically, once it is cloned, we have a local entity in this Wikibase that we can use basically to model the knowledge. And we can also reuse properties from Wikidata like I don't know, serial ordinal end time. Basically, we would like to use this end time property. And basically what is happening here under the hood is that this property is cloned locally in the Wikibase and can be used basically to model knowledge. And this is a feature that we will allow also in the EU knowledge graph, so that you can basically easily reuse all the knowledge that is in Wikibase and also all the properties that are in Wikidata. Sorry. We would like to put in place again a question answering service that we had at some point. So this is queried over the EU knowledge graph, Cohesion projects in Interloire ERDF. And basically you can ask in natural language questions so that you can retrieve some information that are contained in the graph. And finally, we are working, because we have this use case in entity linking. So linking entities that are in another data set to the EU knowledge graph or to Wikidata, and also entity linking from text. So having a textual description and trying to link it to entities that are in the EU knowledge graph and Wikidata, because we have such a use case in Cohesion. So to summarize, we have shown the current content. So this is data that you can either access directly and reuse for your project, or that you can also use to basically model. So if you decide to move some part of the data in the EU knowledge graph, you can use all this data to model the data that you ingest. I gave a brief description about the services that are already currently available and about the tools that we plan to offer in future to allow newer use cases. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. Lydia, you have a question. Oh, it was an applause, sorry. I'm mistaking questions and applause. Right. Any question about the EU knowledge graph specifically? No. There is one from John.
So I'm curious about, you mentioned that you have a use case yourselves for entity linking, and I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so basically in the Cohesion project, so we have projects that are financed by the European Union. We have these projects in the EU knowledge graph, and we are also rendering them on a web page. And these projects often contain entities like villages or cities or museums or point of interests. And one thing that is a bit weak in Cohesion is that there is a lot of textual description, but very few multimedia content. So one idea to basically improve this would be to link entities in the text so that we link them to Wikidata. And then in Wikidata, generally, each entity has at least one image associated, and we could pull basically from Wikidata this multimedia content to basically enrich a bit the experience in Cohesion. Yeah, this was one idea related to this. And the other point of linking entities to Wikidata is for the beneficiaries. So we have a lot of beneficiaries in Cohesion, but they are just strings. And also there we basically want to link them to Wikidata to basically fetch what this beneficiary is, to have, for example, its website, to have a description, and to have an image, so that we can also there basically enrich Cohesion more from the beneficiary side. So these connections between Wikidata and our knowledge are generally to enrich and to basically make the app more interactive.
Thanks, Dennis.
Indeed. And so like I mentioned, the EU knowledge graph used to be mostly the back end of the Cohesion project, but this is changing as well. On the more governance side inside the Commission, we are trying to give it its own independent existence, to push for more visibility, and to onboard new projects. We have identified a few already. I think for some of the use cases we have within the SEMIC community, this is really the approach that is making the most sense. And maybe that's a good time to jump into the use cases actually. So we have a full picture of the different things we identified so far, and we have many people present today that are actually representing some institutions from member states or within the Commission or other institutions. So I will share my slides again so that we can have an overview. Okay. So this is not an exhaustive list, of course, but some of the use cases we have followed quite closely over the three workshops. Those of you who were present already at the first workshop in January heard about the definition of some of these use cases, also because it was starting from a need. So people had some issues and were looking into Wikidata and or Wikibase to solve some of the problems or to look at this as an alternative to other solutions. And so we saw a bit of progress over the months about the possibilities and also the limits of the tools for these use cases. So I go maybe briefly across the different use cases, and then those of you who are present, just I will give you the floor if you want, just to share your own experience. So I don't have to do all the talking. So the first one is the open city architecture from Vloka in Flanders. I see Fabian is there, so in a minute I will give you just the floor to know. So the goal is not to explain the whole use case again, because this would be redundant with the first workshop, but more to share now that you have seen a bit more what is possible with Wikidata Wikibase, where you stand today, and do you consider moving forward with this solutions or not. So we have Werner also from DG Grow, who has a quite complex use case on a single market obstacles, so detecting problems to the adoption of the single market in Europe with data integration from many different databases. We have Lievenbach, but I think he needs to go. Maybe he's already gone. So I can explain very briefly, but so it's the historical archives of the Commission, where they have a few projects, especially about the history of organizations. The Commission is a very big organization. It's being reorganized all the time, and so we need to keep track of all these changes. Very important work, and this could also fit inside the EU Knowledge Graph. We have Mihai, of course, with us, who asked a few questions already, and is in charge of also of EU vocabularies in the publication office. We talked about alignment with Wikidata. Sometimes this makes sense. Sometimes maybe the EU Knowledge Graph for more specific vocabularies would be the option, but one does not exclude the other. And then we have other use cases, also with Eurostat, about, Dennis mentioned all the regions. We have the NUTS classification, but we have also geo data about countries, about borders, administrative entities of Europe, of the world, and so on, that can be reused in other projects. There is a use case with the Parliament also. They are publishing their own open data, which could fit, and so on. So you see that we have many use cases. And just now, before we move on to the more general feedback that I collected about the series of workshops, I want to just give the opportunity to the participants who want to to quickly share their views and what they think about this whole exercise. We can go in that order. Maybe just Fabian, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So indeed, we were very interested in seeing what the potential could be of Wikidata. So we attended the first 2 workshops where we really could feel and see what could be achieved using Wikidata. And we see a couple of potential use cases. So right now we didn't really picked one out, validated one, because we're still investigating what our actual needs would be and how using Wikidata could be an answer to that. But one of the possibilities that we see is from Vloka, which is open city architecture solutions, maybe finding a way of publishing some of the solutions that we have implemented in Flanders onto Wikidata to make sure that the information would be readily available for other member states. Maybe looking at specific problems, how we can log them onto Wikidata, but also digging a little bit deeper, looking at how we solve problems and what the building blocks, as to say, are looking like, and how maybe we can publish these and reuse them onto our own knowledge hub to create a connected solution that is both helping us, but is helping the community as well at the same time. So we will further investigate that probably during the summer months, July, August, maybe September. And probably we'll see at the potential of what we saw during the workshops and put it into practice.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Werner, do you want to say a few words as well about your project and what you learned during the second workshop as well? Seems that Bernard disappeared. Okay, maybe I had to jump to something else. But so, yes, then I can just very quickly summarize that the use case is quite complex. The data coming from 4 different databases, I think, and these are already not aligned between each other. So it's already quite a big exercise to align 4 different data models, and it has to be run in production also with lots of non-public data and also GDPR concerns. The use cases are people reporting problems from going from one member state to the other and being blocked with some administrative things. So maybe one feedback, one of the main things that Werner was concerned about is the possibility to have a closed Wikibase. And I hear this from time and again. We know that we are more in linked open data approach, and we believe all of us in the added value and good potential of this, but this is maybe a question also for Lydia and John. Do you think if you have very sensitive data or internal data, does it still make sense to take advantage of what Wikibase has to offer, but with a fully closed and non-public Wikibase, even for view? What, I don't know, maybe a word on this?
John, do you want to take it or should I?
I have stuff to share, but I'm happy to go second.
Okay. In general, of course, coming from Wikimedia, for us, the open part of linked open data is super important. So we haven't been pushing for the type of data you were talking about, but obviously it's there are valid use cases where it does make sense that you mentioned, right? And yes, I do believe that it still does make sense to use Wikibase if you have a complementary public Wikibase, because the moment you use the same software, it makes it so much easier to combine the data again and write tools for both of them, right? If you are just keeping it for you internally, then maybe. But yeah.
There are other options. Yes, but I mean the added value of having this as linked data and to be able to query it in that way just for you, for me, it's already interesting, but it's clear that you lose a lot by having a fully closed environment. Then maybe you can have a relational database. No, it's not. I mean, there are still use cases where this could make sense, but maybe it's less obvious. That was also my feeling. But we can explore this further also with Bernard and other colleagues who have expressed really concerns about the non-public character of their data. And it could, yeah, for some, it's really a real blocker. We could not even start putting data into EU Knowledge Graph because it's too restricted. It's the reality also of working in the institutions. Some data is just non-public. And maybe questions related to this. Have you, I know you work a lot on the Wikimedia side with the GLAM community, a lot with libraries and museums and so on, but do you have other experience with more government bodies or large institutions, whether the UN or in the US or elsewhere or in Germany with the government or something that we could learn from?
I'm sure we do, but I'm blanking on examples. Maybe Ellen has some?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me? Yes, that's great. Yes, thank you. So we have been very active in trying to reach out to different institutions that is outside of the GLAM space to share the benefits of the linked open data web and to get them on board Wikidata, Wikibase. Unfortunately, these institutions are not large enough institutions where they would serve as good learning partners for the experts that we have here. In fact, for us, we are really trying to see what we can learn from the team here, the people here, the experts here, and then we can share this knowledge and these use cases and the experience and the challenges with some of the other institutions outside of Europe and North America. I'll give you an example. We are just recently starting a project with the Parliament of Ghana, where they have some open data that they wish to share, and we propose to set up a Wikibase instance together with the local Wikimedia communities in order for this data to be part of the linked open data web. So it is still very preliminary at this point in time because they have some technical capacity issues which we are trying to support them. They have got they need to understand better what is linked open data web. So yeah, these are just some examples that I'm trying to share here. Of course, we also are working with some archives as well, but they're in the GLAM space, and also research institutions and universities in other parts of the world as well. But none of these projects are as, shall I say, sophisticated and complicated as what we are seeing here from the use cases. I would also like to add and comment and respond on your earlier questions regarding closed Wikibase instance. There have been several instances when different users came to us and say, hey, Ellen, we have got some data that have got copyright issues. We may or may not be able to put them in open instance. At the same time, we also have data that are open data that we really want to share. So what can we do? Can we mix and match them together in one Wikibase instance? So obviously, technically, it is not possible. And our recommendation is really because we are Wikimedia movement, we want to free knowledge for all humanity. We strongly recommend them to just pilot with a open data first, get used to using Wikibase, and in the event in the near future when their other data eventually can be shared with the rest of the world, then they can put into the open instance. But at the same time, they can also have a closed instance, like what Lydia has rightfully mentioned, where these two different instances can communicate with each other and interact with each other. So yes, I'm sorry, I'm not sure why the camera is not working. I could start my video, but it's not working, and I don't mean to be rude. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's very useful as well. And you mentioned some projects with archives as well, and I see Leven is still connected. I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yes, well, I still have a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Just to give a short comment on the use case that was presented on the slide. Yes, we are sitting on quite a big amount of data about the historical organization of our institution, the European Commission, and actually also its preceding institutions from the beginning of the 50s. So we have a lot of data, and we know that Wikidata is incomplete. We could complement that information to have a more complete view. We have seen that in the EU knowledge graph, some of this information has been included as well, but I guess it was also, or to a certain extent, based on what is available in Wikidata, so that's also a bit incomplete. And we also know that in the publications office, some authority-related information includes that kind of data, but it's not complete neither. So it could be an interesting project to see in how far we could make all these different sources aligned and more complete. So that's in a nutshell what could be possible. Of course, it's only a little drop in a very big ocean of information, but every bit helps. I guess that's a bit the baseline of Wikidata, I guess.
Indeed, Max, it will be very nice if you could we can put together somehow what Leven has there. Really a treasure what he has there with our vocabularies and what you have in the knowledge graph. We can build something nice, I think.
I would really like to go forward with this, and so yeah, I was about to give you the Alan. Finally, your webcam started. Nice.
Yeah, hi. I finally figured out how to sort it out. So sorry. Hello to everyone.
No, Mihai, I was about to give you the floor. If you want, I know you were not able to join the second workshop, unfortunately, so OP was sadly missing out, but I think you have already quite a lot of experience also working both with Wikidata and with the EU knowledge graph, because we work together also. There is Eurovoc, there is corporate bodies, there are actually too many things we would like to do. It's more about selecting the priorities, because the potential is huge, and linking this with the Historga project and with other archives and even totally makes sense. So we should put our heads together after the workshop and really define a concrete working plan. I think that you have additional things you wanted to share also, Mihai? Not really.
No, that's it. Actually, I was looking because we started, me and Leven started working, discussing about the idea a long time ago, but actually we kind of needed somebody in the middle, because it's there are two systems. We have the triple store, our seller. Leven has their own system there, and I was thinking that probably given the conditions of the data that it's there, that doesn't necessarily make sense to be in seller. Probably it will help to somehow use the knowledge graph somewhere in the middle. That might be a possible scenario. Let's say, I don't know.
If we could be the missing link and help two systems communicate with each other, that would be perfect. Great. And I see Hannes was able to connect as well from Eurostat. So hello. Maybe a few words also on the Eurostat side of things and on the data sets you proposed that could be included also in the knowledge graph. Oops, we cannot hear you.
Thank you, Max, for putting me up on the spot here. Hello, everybody, and
you joined just at the right time. You were the next on the list of use cases. So.
No worries. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Hannes Reuter. I'm working in Eurostat in the GISCO team. We are the Geographic Information Systems Coordinator for the Commission, and that's the reason. Thanks for the invitation here. What we could bring in here, or what we discussed previously, is, for example, the administrative the boundaries, the geographic coordinates, for example, for local administrative units. We do that for all the countries and territories, for the countries, for the world already, and but I mean for the European context here, maybe the LAO, which is the local administrative units, which is a space-time data cube, could be looked into to integrate it here to see, because we see it increasingly used by several user communities in Europe, and we receive requests from the statistical world, from the administrative world, from people like the Wi-Fi for EU project. So where say, yeah, where is and what are the LAOs or the local admin units currently? And that would be one way to bring that in. We also have other solutions like for geocoding, but I mean, that's maybe going too far here. Data sets for geographical names or something like that. To bring it in there here, but maybe for local administrative units.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are already working with NUTS, but so the next step would be LAOs. Indeed, at least for Coesio, it has been discussed already a long time ago, because to see the real impact of projects in one city or one sub-region, sometimes the NUTS are too big or too statistical. To go to the next level would be really interesting. I know Coesio is interested. Yes, Roberto, I see you are there as well. I don't know if you want.
Max,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Before we jump in to the next to Roberto, I wanted to react to the point Hannes made about LAO. That's really interesting because, for example, through SEMIC action, we are also following up on some of the discussion related to LAO for the SDG OTS implementation, for instance. And so maybe that's something we could discuss further as part of the next steps beyond this webinar.
Great. It's always good to see links appear in real time in the workshop. It's a pity you couldn't join also Hannes the previous hands-on workshop, but I know it was tricky to have everyone, so it's good that at least we are able to talk to each other all together. Yeah, Roberto, I don't want to push you, but just if you want to.
No, I think it's just to express how interesting it is, and that we're all gathered at the same table. And I think it's very interesting what is happening. And I think from a Coesio perspective, the entity linking is extremely interesting because it really brings knowledge to the European Commission, which it doesn't necessarily have. And so this is where I think the most value added of the integration with Wikidata could be, especially. And of course, the reuse of the knowledge graph for other purpose outside Coesio, for instance, to host more projects or vocabularies from other DGs. This is certainly interesting. Also, in light of some developments regarding transparency, which will require institution and public sector in general to publish more and more data about how the public money is finally used. So, and also to finally bridge at a micro level data, so project level data, or whatever it is, some of the to overcome the classification problem, because every policy or every scientific domain has its own classification. But essentially, when you go to the micro level, it's much more defined and much more easy to define a common classification and a common nomenclature. So be able to use common nomenclature, which are not even that formal, being able to refer it to that specific region that happen in that pass by one region in Europe. That I think it's an incredible opportunity to create knowledge. So just to say thank you for organizing it, and yes, definitely looking forward to see more of this.
Great. Thank you. Very interesting discussion. Just I see time is running a bit, so I'm sure you have still things to share, but I will again open the slides just to be sure not to forget anything, because I collected some feedback also from previous sessions. And so, yes, one of the things we knew already and is very clear looking at the use cases today is that depending on the use case, the different approaches can be taken. And so sometimes the best way is just to ingest data into Wikidata. And we heard about such use cases today where this is really the option making sense. I think with Eurovoc, for instance, it was the choice of the publication office. Lieven mentioned for also that the information about, for instance, DGs is incomplete in Wikidata. It's there, but only partial. So instead of doing it only in the knowledge graph, why not just publish high quality data and complete data into Wikidata so that the whole community can benefit? Sometimes the knowledge graph is the favored option because it's more EU specific and we need custom properties or yes, and we have a few use cases where clearly there isn't the interest to move forward. And sometimes, well, we would just need a custom Wikibase, which could be a cloud Wikibase, either provided by Wikibase Cloud on the side of Wikimedia Germany, or Wikibase as a service, which is something we are considering inside the Commission or inside the SEMIC community, or even people setting up their own Wikibase infrastructure. So many options. The need for a closed internal Wikibase we discussed already. So we know that there is some need to have more support both on the infrastructure and to help with data modeling, because the learning curve can be a bit high at the beginning if you don't have any experience with the wiki ecosystem. Just to start from scratch with an Excel file and try to set up a Wikibase is still not so straightforward. So we will try to continue provide support also. In that sense, OpenRefine can help because it eases the way to access a Wikibase compared to just start with programming language with PyWikibot or more technical options. OpenRefine is a good entry point to upload some data. And Dennis mentioned also that we have the connection with the knowledge graph. So on top of the existing one with Wikidata, of course. And so some food for thought. It's more about the relevance still of the Sparkle querying with good old-fashioned query languages in the age of ChatGPT. It has to be mentioned nowadays in every presentation, but it's more about, okay, what is still the strong points of having this highly structured approach compared to large language models and other things happening today. But of course, if you have other feedback, also live feedback, anyone, please go ahead. And this is also meant to be an open discussion. I put some just possible questions mostly for participants, but anyone can join. So knowing all you know today, do you really consider using Wikidata and Wikibase? If you are still hesitant, wow, please share why. What is preventing you from wider adoption, and do you need more support, assistance, anything? So please, and after this we'll move to the next steps, and we'll try to have all IDs also on a mural where you can upvote nice IDs so that we keep some trace of this for the future. So the floor is yours. Maybe I just stop again to see you all. Anyone wanted to jump in first? Mihai?
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to take all the questions here, but if nobody is active, I always have things to discuss with you, Max. You are asking about ways to interact with Wikidata, and one scenario that we had tried to push our users to use Wikidata was to use federated queries between our own tables and the data that it's already in Wikidata. This was practically the idea behind our push for alignments, in order to have to help them use the information that it's in Wikidata, because that's the whole point of linked open data. So one specific scenario was, for example, of some very particular entities, the flags of the countries. You know, there is we have the countries, we have the country table, but we don't add flags to them. So the idea is that, okay, so I suggested, I made myself a query, a federated query, to show how it can be done. But of course, that same question that I already mentioned before was how trusty it is. It is. So I was thinking that maybe here the EU Knowledge Graph can help somehow in order to establish kind of trusted source of flags for the European countries, and even more than European countries. That might be probably an idea to discuss about later on. That will support some of the use cases in the institutions that I'm aware of. So it's not necessarily a question, it's more like a suggestion for development. You are muted, Max.
I was muted indeed. I noticed. No, it's meant to be an open discussion, really, in our small community. So that's great. Kids, what would be the best way forward? I know there is the mural. I still have one slide with the next steps we can share together. So what is the best option?
I think I'll just give a quick introduction. We can
Okay.
then go over the next steps, and then we go to the mural.
Okay.
Yeah, just as Max described, we're looking for some input, because we are creating our roadmap to see what actions we want to prioritize in the next coming months. And therefore we already have some actions in mind, which Max will identify on the slide. But we also wanted to hear from you. Do you like these actions that we have identified so far? Are there any others? Are there concrete actions where you would need our support? Things similar to that one. But I will first give the word back to you, Max, to introduce the actions, and then I will quickly give the link to the mural, so we can at least get it captured, so we can integrate it into our roadmap and take your opinions into account while creating the roadmap for the future.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's a bit ping pong here, but let's go then to the last slide here. Indeed, we have been trying to summarize all the interests into different categories, and some trends are emerging. So the first one is all the work around community building, because we now have a real community about people interested about Wikidata, Wikibase. It's still a small one, but it's a strong one. So one of the action is really to continue the individual follow-up of the use cases we have presented today with the participants. We have been doing a lot of things collectively, but maybe now is the time also to look one by one and with also the differences to be able to follow up. And I know Claudio is there also today and is very dedicated to help with this. So also to advertise the success stories and the things that are working, because sometimes we do great things, but we don't talk about it a lot. And so other people don't know and it could inspire them. I saw Alan put in the chat that the knowledge graph is an inspiration also for other governments around the world. That's very kind words, but maybe, yes, we don't communicate enough on what we have been doing. So that would be a good point. And of course, to extend this community, which is still quite limited, especially in terms of member states. We don't have so many member states actively involved yet, and we want to change this. And SEMIC is really about interoperable Europe, so we should reach out to more countries. On the training side, so for the second workshop, we developed some concrete materials to really start from scratch and ingest data in a Wikibase. We want this to be reused also for people who could not join physically, so that they can follow the training and try it themselves. Also document all what we have learned about the pros and cons of this whole approach compared to a more traditional approach, let's say, to data management. And in the future, maybe we'll not have a full-fledged workshop series again, but more ad hoc knowledge sharing sessions from time to time to share tips and tricks inside the community, and more technical webinars on one thing or the other. And the third trend is what we call the pilot activities, where we can go a bit further. For instance, there is the sandbox that we set up for the second workshop. It's still there. We were having some technical issues, but the goal is to be able to maintain it at least in the near future if there is some usage or people interested to just do some tests there. Like I mentioned, the knowledge graph is also open to onboard other prototypes. We have already a few. And also on the Wikidata side, more to push about, so there is what Mihai mentioned on the publication office side, but from the SEMIC side, we also have a lot of core vocabularies that could be reused to enrich Wikidata as well. But of course, these are just our ideas or what we took from the workshop. So if you have other ideas or you want to push more for one on the other, that's the goal of the mural that we'll be sharing now, and we can add also other ideas. Thanks a lot.
Yes, so I will just quickly cycle you through Mural. For those who are not familiar with the tool, it's quite intuitive and simple. You can double click to make a post-it, although we have tried to make your life easier by just providing some post-its on top. And we've also provided some thumbs up which you can drag and drop on activities which you think are a good idea, need to be prioritized, etc. Just to give you an overview, on the left upper corner, we have the activities on community building. There, next to that, we have the training activities, and then we have the pilots. I think, Max, in terms of other feedback, that's something you were referring to in the previous slide. That's something you could put in the right bottom corner there. If anyone is having issues connecting to the mural, please let me know. And maybe for our the friendly people from Wikimedia Deutschland. I think there's clear links to be found between the roadmap you shared with us today and what we're trying to accomplish here. So if you see some clear links with upcoming activities that you're seeing, please feel free to also add that via post-it or after the webinar. I will now give you some time to go through the activities and give us some feedback via this mural.
Could you share it as well here?
Yes,
so that
I
we
think
have
that
a
might be
common
easier.
view
Yes.
of the whole thing. Yes.
Yes.
And oops.
Let me check. Oh. We'll give you a couple of minutes now to have a look at them, and then we can come back to it once everyone has gone through them. If you can't come up with anything concrete currently, that's fine as well. You can always just indicate a thumbs up with the activities that you would like to see, which gives us an idea of where we need to focus our time and efforts in the coming months.
So while this is going on, maybe I just had still one or two questions also for our Wikimedia colleagues.
Sure.
Are still there. One question we had, because we are in SEMIC, a very European community, and you are based in Germany, and that's also a very nice point, but sometimes people are confused about the position of Wikimedia Germany, of the German chapter, compared to the main Wikimedia Foundation. Can you just in 2 words maybe clarify the level of independence you have and the
Right.
special position you have? No, but I'm not talking about no, but
Right.
because it can be difficult to grasp why it is Wikimedia Germany developing Wikidata, for instance.
Right. So the Wikimedia Foundation is the mothership, so to say. Wikimedia Deutschland is a legally independent organization from the Wikimedia Foundation. The Wikimedia Foundation is the holder of all the trademarks, runs the infrastructure, servers, and so on. At some point in 2011, 2012, the discussion started, okay, should we start Wikidata? And if so, who's going to develop it? At that point in time, the foundation was not able to make that happen because they had a lot of other things on their plate, like the visual editor, mobile apps, and so on. So Wikimedia Deutschland, at that time, a rather small organization with just 15 people or so. The EDA Pavel Richter said, okay, if the foundation doesn't do it, we can do it. And that kind of set up Wikimedia Deutschland as the organization that is in charge of Wikidata and Wikibase development. And of course, it happens in collaboration with the foundation because we run on their infrastructure and all of that. But when it gets to Wikidata, Wikimedia Deutschland is the one you want to talk to if you need anything or have wishes, stuff like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It was a more general question, not really from myself, but I think it's good to state it explicitly so that everyone is aware of this. Thanks a lot. I don't know where we stand now with the pilots. It's not easy to have a proper Zoom to see everything and be able to read at the same time, but I see a lot of activity there, so that's great. Are you still waiting a bit or trying to? Yes.
Yes, I'm just wondering.
We will close in 10 minutes, Lydia and John, for us as well. It's really planned to be this way, but so we need to try to summarize. It's also for us for the future, but I think it's good to just wrap up with all the nice ideas you are putting here.
Yeah, I was just trying to fix something because I saw people dragging and dropping the thumbs up, but they were disappearing in the background. So I think I fixed it now, but it might be needed to redo it for some of them. I see now that at least for the pilots one, they were working, but I needed to bring them to the front. Did anyone experience that issue? Just let me know. Okay. So some more things that were shared on the mural are, for example, the Spotlight good and easy to reuse solutions and the interoperable Wikidata items. Maybe can you be a bit more? Can you give a bit more info, Fabian, what you mean by this? Oh, your mic is a bit, it sounds a bit far off.
Mm-hmm.
Were you able to fix it, Fabian? Otherwise, we'll just briefly continue to another post, then we can try again in a second. Okay. Okay. I also saw a post-it from, I think, from Wikimedia Deutschland about the community manager who is already doing a blog series highlighting community projects. So that's a clear synergy there.
If you have projects you'd like to kind of put in front of her, maybe reach out through the partnerships link that Alan shared, and they can direct you to Valerie, or join our Telegram group.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, John. Let's just quickly see. So some thumbs up for the maintenance of the sandbox. Some for the CoreVox link into Wikidata. The entity linking, which was also discussed. The development of models. The hackathons. Let me check whose idea that was. Mario, can you give a bit more info on what your expectations would be, or the outcome at least of those hackathons?
Hey, hello. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. That would be to maybe it's a kind of community building, and that would consist of many invited organizations, or maybe in the same SEMIC group, there are many groups of research that compete in the sense of who is giving the best solution for a specific goal. And maybe to provide some kind of award in order to to promote these activities and this competitiveness, you know.
Okay, thank you. Then just to round up, we have some other feedback, some advice to build a bridge starting from existing use cases. And I found one more posted here. I think
on the previous one you just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
so the link with existing platform, can we connect this to the one above, the orange one, where we would also connect or show how Wikidata and Wikibase are actually interesting alternatives for traditional data warehousing? So can we connect to this, or?
We can do the links between the different suggestions just after, maybe, because clearly there are some links indeed.
Yep.
Okay.
I've duplicated it for now.
Okay.
So they're together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So Hannes was writing something.
I think this one, the corporate level data sets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a bit
can also
more
be
connected to the Corvox from SEMIC.
Yes.
It's a similar.
Yeah. You could say it's under the umbrella of loading things into
Exactly.
the Wikidata one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one question. The mural remains available for people if they still want to add some later thoughts until when?
Let's say we keep it open until the end of the week. Yeah. If people still want to give their input there, you can still find it there.
If you have afterthoughts or something missing, I think it's nice. So, and we will summarize everything. Great. So it has been a very productive workshop. Thanks a lot, all of you. Yes, especially Wikimedia colleagues who were able to join today. Also, Dennis, participants, everyone. I think, yeah, this series of 3 workshops was really helpful to see the whole potential of Wikidata and Wikibase, and now we have a much clearer view both of the technical solutions, but also of the community we have, of the needs inside our community. And so I hope we'll continue the good work together. Thank you. Any final thoughts? Oh. Claudio.
Hey, hello, everybody. So let me see if I start I actually wanted to upload, but the raising hand came out. So I'll take just the opportunity to say hi to everybody. And it was really exciting. I myself, I'm really a nerd in RDF and knowledge graph, but I cannot practice because in SEMIC I cover other roles. So I envy you that you get to play with this stuff and make some cool knowledge graph and really contribute to the community which I was born in. Now they move. So I really follow this closely, and I hope we have more chances to talk about this with Max. So thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.